How could you have identities like that? Then there's the linguistic identities, which I just mentioned. Saracolis and Inki, Gadzago, Vai, Mende, Kisikono, Pule went through half a dozen African languages to check out the word. And they're using the same bloody word that the Americans are using. How is that possible? If it was a European, you only need one piece of evidence. I'm giving you 7. How could you deny that? And it doesn't stop there. There is the botanical evidence. Take the banana. We use the word banana for the banana, but that's not the African word for the banana. The word for the banana is bakoko in Africa. Banana is an Arab word. The Africans didn't have bananas. The bananas were introduced into Africa by the Arabs very early, and they have a different word for it. Banana. They do not have banana. They have bakoko. I have checked the bakoko words because they found bananas in Peru. Peru didn't have bananas. Pre-Columbian Peru is not supposed to have, they didn't have original bananas. The banana, the reason why we found the banana is because when they buried their dead, they would have ceremonies every year, the year of the day of the death, and they would put fruit in the grave, and among the fruit they put in the grave was the banana. And they do not originally have bananas. That has been checked out. It's only found in these graves. If they were eating the banana, we'd find other kind of evidence. And the word for the banana in Peru is the same as the word for the Africans have. We call it banana, but the Africans call it bakoko. So I started checking out the words in Peru. How did this banana appear? They don't have bananas at that time in South America. And found in Galibi it's bakuku, in Oyapock it's bako, in Oyampi it's these are all South American languages. In Oyampi it's bako me, and Tupi is bako ba, because pa and pa are interchangeable plosives. And in Apiacus it's bakowa, in Puri it's baho. So you have bakoko, bakuku, bako, bako me, bako ba, baho. Can't happen unless you have a connection, a very early connection. And then comes the oceanographic evidence, because most people say, here is Africa and here is America. How could the Africans cross? They only have canoes that Tarzan can turn over in the movies. Well, that's another myth again. First of all, there are 2 things here that they did not take into account. I lived on a river. My father was superintendent of road and river transport over an area that was as large as Scotland and Wales. I grew up in the river. And my mother and father were divorced. That was the first divorce in our country, recorded divorce in our country. They later remarried. That was the first recorded remarriage in our country. I wouldn't advise you to do it. It doesn't work. But anyway, they did it in order to save the children, and I am grateful to them, but they suffered. But anyway, to come back, you have this knowledge. I had this knowledge of currents because I used to swim 3.5 miles across the water to the air base. That was a big thing to show how you are. You know, boys are like that. They're always playing the ass, trying to prove they're strong. Several of us drowned. So you could see what I mean by playing the fool. Anyway, I used to swim across the river, so I was extremely strong. And I knew about currents, because most people think the river is just like that. No, the river is alive. In certain parts of the falls in Guyana, the water is running as fast as a motor car. You don't have to have an engine, you have to know how to steer. Or it hits you against the rock and you're blown to pieces. The water moves as fast as a motor car. And in those waters, they do not move as fast as a motor car, the great rivers, but they move with force and take you places. And we have discovered 3 currents of Africa that take you automatically to America. There's one of the Cape Verde, one of the Senegambia coast, one of the southern coast of Africa. Once you are caught in those currents, you have to come to America unless the fish get you first. Whether you have an engine or not, the water is the engine. It's very powerful. And it's exactly where those currents end that we find the African presence. It goes to Mexico. It goes into other parts of America. It goes to Brazil. They've recently found, listen to this, look at the lies involved here. They recently found an African Negro woman. I say Negro because not all blacks are Negro. The African has 6 faces. For example, if you're in a dry African climate, you have a narrow nose. If you're in a wet or moist African climate, you have a broad nose. Most people don't know that. They don't know they have 6 types of African. There's the Nilotic type. They're all black. But they have the Nilotic type, the so-called true Negro type, all sorts of types they have. And I have in my new book the faces of the various types. And all of these types appear. But what is most extraordinary is the evidence we have of their ships. They had the ships. Thor Heyerdahl became world famous because he got the Baduma people on Lake Chad to build a boat that the Africans built before Christ. Thor Heyerdahl used the boat the Africans built before Christ. They showed him the model. They built the boat. He financed it. A boat they were using before Christ, and it crossed the Atlantic successfully. Heyerdahl told me, Van Sertima, we did not even have to fish. The fish jumped on board. Because in those currents are millions of fish. Millions! And it wasn't just Heyerdahl. Alain Bombard also tested African boats. And they made it in less time than Vespucci. You have several, if you study the work I have done in the new book, Early America Revisited, you'll see these guys made it in less time than the European boats because of their knowledge of the currents. And they're not only currents off the Cape Verde, off the Senegambia coast, off the southern coast of Africa that take you to America. They're currents that spin you back towards Africa. We have an evidence of a boat, American boat, Native Americans landing in Africa 62 BC. There were 7 in the boat because it was an accident. They were taken to because the currents that not only take you there and pull you back. We don't have any evidence of Europeans doing that. We have it in Native American 62 BC. That is in my book, They Came Before Columbus. And apart from this oceanographic evidence, there's the navigational evidence. That's the boats. The Africans had the boats. The Africans built the boat for Heyerdahl. Heyerdahl became world famous about how he crossed the Atlantic. He didn't build the boat. It was Africans who built the boat for him. A boat they had used before Christ, the Baduma people on Lake Chad. It's in my new book, Early America. You'll see the boat. The Africans built it. They could easily have crossed. And when you cross, the current actually takes you into the Caribbean, to Brazil, or parts of South America, to Mexico, etc. Recently, listen to this, look at the cheating going on, look at the profound dishonesty of scientists. They found a Negro woman in Brazil, where the currents come from Africa, the Caribbean, Brazil, etc. They found a Negro woman in Brazil, 12,500 years old. That is even before the Native Americans. Now, Negroes always came from Africa, but it was so embarrassing that they suggested, yes, it's a Negro, but it came from Asia. Now, this is Brazil, you know. Brazil is on the Atlantic coast. To come from Asia, you have to get a boat that's going to take you all the way to South America, and then you have no currents may take you, help you to get to South America, but then you have to walk to Brazil. Then you get the tip, you have to walk all the way to Brazil to drop your skull. And the New York Times ran the story like that, you know, thinking, and they even changed the name. When they found this Negroid woman, they call her Louisa, because the first human we found on earth is Lucy, an African. So they call her Louisa. But when it got to the New York Times, they call her Valherbe or Malherbe or something like that. And she comes from Asia. Niggers don't come from Africa anymore. They come from Asia. You find them in the wrong time, in the wrong place. Jesus Christ, I mean, how far can you take this nonsense? It is absurd. And you find also skeletal evidence. Listen to this, because I have to be very careful here. I was in 2 intelligence services in the world, the Guyana Intelligence Service and the British Intelligence Service, and you're not supposed to tell secrets. So I have to say this in a way that shows that I don't know nothing. Okay. They found 2 African skeletons in United States Virgin Islands at Hull Bay, St. Thomas. These skeletons were found in a strata or layer of earth which is datable 1250 AD, 2.5 centuries before Columbus. But they could not date the bones. Something strange had entered the bones of these skeletons. Now, I know why something strange had happened, why something strange had entered, because of something that was done in that area, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. All I could say is not far from Cuba, and Cuba was giving us some trouble, and we had to tell Castro, come on, we're the world power, so don't play the fool with us. We'll teach you a lesson. That's all I'm allowed to say. But I went down to the Virgin Islands when I heard about these skeletons. And they promised, I shamed Vesalius, the archaeologist at the island. I spoke to the whole university, a big crowd, shamed him. He said he'd allow me to see the skeletons. Come there by 12 o'clock the next day. I arrived 10 to 12, raced across the island. Arrived at 10 to 12. The door was locked. Well, I am a very nice person. But when I get angry, I'm not very nice. So I ran at the door, wham! Shook the place. The police came on. What are you doing here, sir? I was invited here. You know the place, don't you see the place is closed? Yes, sir, but it's very strange that it should be closed. I was invited here, I was to come here by to move along, sir, or we have to arrest you. Well, I moved along. But fortunately for me, friends on the island who'd heard of my interest, and I'd spoken to the university there, they took me to a rock pool at St. John. That was St. Thomas where they found the skeletons. They took me to a rock pool at St. John's in the Virgin Islands. And they wanted to show me carvings of tropical animals. When I saw these carvings, I said, no, that is not evidence. Those tropical animals are in both places, both Africa and America. But as I was preparing to leave, the light of the sun shone on the rock, just above the rock pool. And I looked down and I saw a strange formation, dots and crescents. And I said, nature cannot do that. Nature cannot do that. It's because it will wash against the rock and it may cause a kind of cleavage in the rock, but it can't make perfect curves and dots and curves. It cannot do that. So I went down there and I cleaned the rock and I photographed it. I sent it to various parts of the world. I sent it to Africa. So someone in Africa, in Ghana, said it's the Guyaname sign, and I said, send me evidence of the Guyaname sign, and he sent it to me, and I said, no, don't waste my time, man. That doesn't look anything like the Guyaname sign. But I kept taking it wrong, and eventually Dr. Barry Fell of Harvard, he's dead now, he'd written America BC. The New York Times ran 3 pages attacking me and Fell. I brought out, they came before Columbus. Barry Fell brought out America BC. He was dealing with other kinds of contacts. I was dealing with African contact. The New York Times ran 3 pages attacking me and Fell. They wouldn't even allow anybody in America. But fortunately for me, Dr. Clarence Wine, the oldest of American archaeologists, who'd been on the place where they found the stone heads with African faces, He wrote a marvelous essay on me. Because he was the oldest American archaeologist, they couldn't kick out his essay. So he said, I am absolutely convinced of the soundness of Van Sertima's conclusions. So in spite of all that, it came through. But look now, the skeletons, we cannot move on. Because recently we have another clown who's entered the Virgin Islands, and he's saying now that even though they're in strata 1250 AD, these skeletons could not be, could not be Africans because they have, could not be proper Africans because they have something teeth, they have some problem with the teeth. And Africans cannot have that problem because they are some sort of nonsense, but they don't eat certain things.